The situation in Niger and talk more about that. Joining me for that is Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, David Aworawo. Thank you for joining us on The World Now. It does appear there's some kind of synergy. There's a league of coup plotters standing up for their own in the Republic of Niger. What do you make of the warning coming from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Guinea about the situation in Niger?
First of all, thank you for having me. The warning needs to be taken seriously, and it should influence Nigeria and the decision of ECOWAS on what to do, to address the crisis in Niger. The warning should be taken seriously because it means that there is a league of military leaders across West Africa. We now have, we have Guinea, we have Burkina Faso, we have Mali supporting Niger. If ECOWAS starts threatening military action, that is all means possible, and that means also including military action. Just take the scenario that these countries form their league, and then ECOWAS and the other countries decide to intervene militarily. Russia will support them. The West will support ECOWAS and its forces, and West Africa will become a theater of war. And West Africa will be, the worst for it. So the threat should be taken seriously, and it should influence caution on the part of Nigeria and, of course, ECOWAS member countries on how to respond to the crisis in Niger.
All right. Before now, ECOWAS has actually issued a weak warning to the military junta in Niger to relinquish power and reinstate President Mohamed Bazoum as democratically elected leader of that country. Now that you mentioned that this warning from the League of Coup Plotters should be taken seriously, how should ECOWAS tread forthwith?
Yeah, ECOWAS has already imposed sanctions, economic and financial sanctions. They should look at Niger very closely and see other areas where sanctions can be imposed. The military intervention should be off the table because there are too many complications. It even has a legal dimension, a legal conundrum. The 1993 reverse ECOWAS treaty provides for intervention when there is breakdown of law and order or genocide. Neither of these has happened in Niger, although it does talk about democratic governance and all that, but that is not one of the issues that is military intervention, one of the issues that the treaty provides that ECOWAS could intervene for. So if there's even a legal issue if ECOWAS decides to intervene to ensure that democracy is restored, democratic governance is restored in Niger. In addition to that, of course, there are several other issues. You can see France and other countries are talking about their citizens, how to repatriate them.
Indeed.
Nigeria has even refugees in Niger. I mean, if there's a war, how will all of these complications, be addressed? So sanctions should just be the way. ECOWAS and all of us should prepare our minds for some years of military rule in Niger. That's the truth of the matter. The intervention, as how many hours have passed now, how many days have passed now? Once a coup has lasted for these many days, it has come to stay. So how to get them to hand over to civilians as quickly as possible should be the focus of ECOWAS. And sanctions will help to get them to quickly do that. But any thought of trying to restore the deposed president through military action will just be plunging West Africa into a crisis of monumental proportion, which we don't need at this time. And one thing to add is this. The justness of an action, military action, is not the only reason why one should engage in it. But the potential to win and all the other ramifying consequences should be considered. And when everything is considered, military action will not be the right course of action. So sanctions is just the way around it, so as to get them to quickly restore democratic governance moving forward.
Already Nigerians are bearing the brunt of this action. Well, it might not look like a full-fledged conflict just yet, but then there are already reports of, actions of violence, acts of violence really in that country. And just as you've mentioned, France and Italy are already planning to repatriate their nationals and European Union nationals from that country. Is the sense that the situation is irredeemable, really?
Well, at this point, I think restoring the deposed president, Bazoum, is irredeemable. We should just brace up for some years of military rule in Niger. Breakdown of law and order, yes, that can be, handled with careful intervention here and there. That can be prevented. The people being attacked are actually politicians and those who have worked with them, mainly. And there's also a league of people who are also protesting against France. There's strong anti-France sentiment who think that France has contributed to the economic woes. All of these ones can be handled carefully such that the violence can go down. But the question of restoring the post-President Bazoum, that is almost impossible at this point because the coup has succeeded. When I spoke on this issue a few days ago, I thought that the National Guard and the regular army was going to counter the presidential guard that deposed him. But somehow they were able to forge a common ground. With all of these elements having forged a common ground, the issue of restoring the deposed president, to my mind, at this point, is irredeemable.
All right. You've already mentioned the fact that ECOWAS has placed sanctions on Niger, but then how effective really would sanctions be? Because before we got to the point where ECOWAS gave this 7-day ultimatum, a delegation was commissioned to be led by the president of Benin Republic, Patrice Talon, but they could not even access the country because the airspace was shut. So what now is the road? What is the journey to peace in troubled Niger?
The journey to peace is to continue sanctions. I mean, we have a recent experience along that line. Mali and Guinea, the sanctions forced the military governments to begin to even look for ECOWAS. Not ECOWAS now looking for them, looking for ECOWAS to see how these sanctions could be, reduced. And ECOWAS, in turn, demanded for a speedy return to democratic governance in those countries. So sanctions will work. It won't be magical. But sanctions, I mean, these are countries that are very poor. Niger is the world's poorest country, which also speaks to corruption in the country, because if the country is exporting 5% of the world's most important minerals, some of the world's most important minerals, and the country is that poor, of course, it speaks to corruption in the country. But that's just by the way. The sanctions will work, and that will create a leeway for negotiations, which will make them, put in place some transition to civilian government moving forward. For now, they are still just trying to put forth a face of bravado. But after a while, the sanctions will make them come to terms with ECOWAS, and they'll be able to negotiate some way forward. And that is the only way forward, really.
Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, David Aworawo, thank you for talking to us on The World Now.